Last week, Human Rights Watch Incorporated put vulnerable groups all over the world at risk by changing the definition of apartheid. You won't believe how they did it, or why. This is a pretty big deal, yet the media almost entirely ignored it, so let's get into it. Most of the world thinks of apartheid as the system of institutionalized, legalized racism and segregation that used to characterize South Africa, and that we still see in some places today. For example, China is holding 1 million Uyghur Muslims in concentration camps, or in Egypt and Algeria, where under the law, Christians don't have equal rights. Apartheid goes beyond racism. It is so severe that it has its own word. However, HRW Incorporated specifically said that is not the definition they are using. Instead, HRW wrote an entire 60,000-word paper just to accuse Israel of what they call the crime of apartheid. And the only way they could make that accusation was by creating this new definition, which they buried deep inside the document. Here's how they did it. HRW took selected text from a document called the International Convention on the Suppression and Punishment of the Crime of Apartheid. Written in the 1970s, only about half the countries in the world signed on to this document. Modern, Western, liberal democracies did not adopt it, including the United States, Canada, France, Israel, Italy, the Netherlands, the United Kingdom, New Zealand, Australia, and many more. Then, HRW took elements from another document called the Rome Statute, which was also adopted by about half the world but strongly opposed by many countries, including the US. Finally, Human Rights Watch Incorporated combined selected portions of these two documents into their own new definition of apartheid, which has not been adopted by any country at all. This new definition is used only by HRW itself, an undemocratic, unelected, huge nonprofit corporation in New York with an $85 million a year budget. This new definition is so broad that if you actually applied it fairly and rigorously, almost every country and person in the world would be guilty of it in one way or another. Our research team tried applying this definition to see who else is guilty of the crime of apartheid. The United States, the UK, Japan, every government in the Arab world, France, Finland, Starbucks, Disney World, my kindergarten teacher. To be clear, I'm not accusing these governments or companies or my kindergarten teacher, who, by the way, was an angel. I'm pointing out a problem with the definition, a problem that goes far beyond Jews and Israel. Jamie Miti, whose family personally suffered under apartheid in South Africa, explains.
The claim that is made by BDS that Israel is an apartheid state, I find it to be intellectually dishonest. And I find purveying that kind of intellectually dishonesty to a black audience to be insulting, because you are either trying to bastardize the history of apartheid to suit your political narrative, or you are deliberately misleading people.
But Human Rights Watch Incorporated didn't apply their new definition to the whole world. They applied it only to Jews living in Israel. Not all of Israel, just Jewish individuals for whom they recommend criminal prosecution for crimes against humanity. HRW's research triggered a chorus of objections, including from the Biden White House. Many critics noted that the facts were falsified, sources were openly biased, and that HRW itself has been politicized by private agendas for at least 20 years. Some critics noted statements by HRW's original founder, Robert Bernstein, who for years was saddened by his organization's downfall, saying it had lost critical perspective on a conflict in which Israel has been repeatedly attacked, and that it is issuing reports on the Israeli-Arab conflict that are helping those who wish to turn Israel into a pariah state. Unfortunately, most of this didn't make it into the mainstream media in the initial news cycle. Honest reporting has been at the forefront of holding journalists accountable ever since the report came out. If you'd like to see our take, you can find our article in the description, along with the original HRW paper. We link to all our sources, so you can check them out yourself. Now, Israel has plenty of shortcomings, and like every modern, diverse democracy, it faces challenges, ethnic tensions, and sometimes deserves criticism. But it also has a diverse population that includes Muslims, Druze, Bedouins, Christians, Baha'i, and many more. These minorities have equal rights, vote in elections, serve in parliament, and sit on the Supreme Court. They are actors and athletes, police officers and news anchors. As minorities in healthcare, they have served side by side with their Jewish colleagues on the front lines of the fight against COVID-19. And all Israelis, including minorities, were vaccinated at the fastest pace of any country in the world. When we accuse a country like that, but give a free pass to countries that have true legalized oppression and apartheid, this actually places the world's most vulnerable populations at risk. And when anyone makes up laws that apply only to Jews, well, we have to ask, who will they target next?